We are back looking at John Piper's concept of Christian freedom. In my last video, I talked about parts 1 and 2 of this Ask Pastor John series that dealt with free will and our accountability. And today we are examining the last installment, specifically on Christian freedom. You don't have to have watched my part 1 to understand this one. We're going to recap it anyway, but I'll link it below so you can go there later and watch it at your leisure. You can use whatever free will you have to make a choice about it. Let's go. Hi, my name is Scarlett, and I am an atheist and skeptic, and these days I'm looking at Christian views on freedom. A lot of Christians say we have to have free will to choose God because He doesn't want robots and we send ourselves to hell or something. And they think they have a pretty spiffy type of freedom, all sin and no aftertaste. John Piper sure thinks Christians are superior, so let's get this analysis off the ground. He starts off this installment with a review of parts 1 and 2. Self-made chains, what we said about free will so far is that when it comes to choosing Christ, to coming to Christ, nobody has this free will. Nobody has the ultimate self-determination that would empower them to overcome their own bondage, their own blindness, or that would provide decisive influence and open their eyes to see Christ as compelling and to come to Him. Nobody can do that for themselves. Alright, so sin is presented as bondage and we need God to release us from that. Never mind that God gets to define what sin is. It hasn't been demonstrated that sin is a good way to categorize behavior. Sure, some sins like murder or stealing might appeal universally, but sin can be pretty much anything like watching the wrong movies, playing the wrong video games, eating too much, having sex with the wrong person. In other words, some sins can't be shown to be bad generally. But anyway, we don't have free will. God has to give this to us. Got it. Still recapping parts 1 and 2, left to ourselves, we are so deeply in love with darkness we can't come to the light. We are responsible to come. We have said that because our inability to come is not a natural inability. Oh my gosh. Does somebody not proofread these for him? I mean, the language. Can we not word this differently? It's just so funny how often this language starts to sound sexual. But anyway. It is a moral inability. We are not chained to a post wanting desperately to come to Christ, but being forbidden to come to Christ. Nobody's in that situation, and the reason we can't come is because we love the alternative more. Then Christ breaks in, and the Holy Spirit breaks in and sets us free. I'm still stuck on this idea that if we have an inability, we are unable. Piper et al. Seems stuck on a physical inability where we want something but literally can't physically do it, and the moral one where we just have a different preference. Once again, God is the one that created our inability, and if I am unable, I am unable. It doesn't matter why I am unable. Like, if I can't see why that is good, I don't know how that makes it any better. But I guess the point is that since we didn't choose the correct way, we have to be accountable for the way we are, even though we didn't make ourselves that way. God gets the glory for everything correct, and we can only get the blame. And not to beat a dead analogy, but sin has not been shown to be a bad thing. It's this amorphous thing, and it includes things that are neutral or are just fine. So anyway, let's get on to freedom. What it means to be free. I want to argue that only Christians know true freedom. I want to get at what that true freedom is for just a few minutes. Oh, so now we're looking at true freedom, and only Christians know it. This is not self-serving, denigrating, or manipulative at all. Sarcasm, in case you don't hear it dripping off my voice. And we're going to skip all of the quotes by Paul. That's mainly what gets quoted in these, so let's go on to the next section. So our freedom is described as a free, joyful, satisfying obedience to God. If you use the word free as part of your definition of freedom, you've lost the dictionary game. Find a synonym, find some other way to say this, but you can't say freedom is being free. Anyway, alright, so we're back to freedom as obedience. I don't know how it's free, since God's grace is why we chose it, but it is apparently joyful and satisfying too. I think what he is relying on is one of the free froms, which is a different kind of freedom. Freedom from worry, freedom from care, freedom from burden. Kind of a passive one, where you don't have the duties that you usually would have or you might have. And who needs all that pesky thinking about what freedom is or isn't, what is right action or what is harmful? Just obey God. If he tells you to murder someone, must be a good thing, right? Am I being too sarcastic in this video? Asking for a friend. So let's see what else John Piper has for us. Here is my answer. I will put it in 4 pieces and then I'll give a picture through the illustration of skydiving. To be fully free, free indeed, fully free, truly free, free indeed. We've got all these modifiers of free. All right. We must have freedom of desire, freedom of ability, freedom of opportunity, and freedom of no regrets. Skydiving gives a great illustration of what I mean. I'm going to have issues with all of these freedoms he has just posited, but I'll address them each in turn. And skydiving? Like, we're going to compare being a Christian to jumping out of a plane? Let's see what he says about this. Now, what you want in this illustration is the glorious freedom of skydiving, falling at 120 miles an hour with the wind in your face and then popping your parachute at the last minute and coming safely to the ground, and then doing it over and over again in all kinds of conditions. You want that kind of free, joyful experience. I just have to say hats off for this great image, skydiving, the activity where people say they feel like they're flying, like gravity doesn't apply. Now, I don't remember having this thrilling an experience when I was a Christian. Most of what it was like to be a Christian just was like boring, like a duty. And I found the fact that there was so much injustice and suffering in the world puzzling. How did that make for the best world as created by the tri-omni God? Anyway, I know that Piper is trying to leave Christians with an image of how it is to be a Christian, how great this is, that this is free. It's so great. It's like jumping out of a plane and landing safely. You know, all this so they don't want to leave the faith. But I just have to say that skydiving is not on my bucket list. I'm not really great with heights. And so the idea that this is what you're going to compare it to, I find it a little funny. I think a lot of people would be scared, and maybe that's what it's also about, is that, oh, all of these people that would be afraid to jump out of a plane, but you know, we Christians, we are like hardcore like that. Anyway, I think he's going for a lot here that just doesn't apply. All right, we're going to see what this skydiving example is about. Number 1, an open possibility. Suppose that you are on your way to the airport to go up for your first real jump, and your car hits a pothole, bangs into a telephone pole, and while you're waiting for the truck to come, you miss your appointment for skydiving. Man, that must have been some pothole. Does this guy live in New Jersey? All right, but he says, your opportunity passes, so you lose the freedom of opportunity. So you have to have a freedom of opportunity, and you just lost it. This example has nothing really to do with freedom. I mean, you missed your time slot. Get another and get a grip over not getting your way, Karen. I mean, in my mind, your choice is in the hobby you want. You've chosen skydiving. It doesn't mean you control every aspect of every facet of it. What if there isn't a business that offers skydiving in your town? Are you not free? I just think that his analogy doesn't work here, because if there really is a skydiving business, you know, you get another slot and you have another opportunity. It's not like that was the only one ever. So I find that a little ridiculous. Now, if John Piper is really interested in freedom of opportunity, he might want to look into some social justice movements. Certainly, from a social and legal perspective, there is progress to be made in terms of giving more people more opportunities and options for things like their education or jobs and other areas. We can open up life for lots of people in lots of ways, and there's more work to be done. But of course, he's not talking about that. He's just talking about we need an opportunity to be able to jump for Jesus. That's it. And I find this is not really freedom. The fact that you cannot control everything is not really freedom. There could be an argument made about opening up more areas of the world to more people, with some people have access and some people don't, but that's not what this discussion is about. Okay, we're going to move on. But to me, this is not freedom. Let's go on. Number 2, the proper training. Suppose you make it to the airport, but it turns out that you skipped all the classes and you don't know the first thing about skydiving. You don't have any basic abilities to do it, and they are not going to let you do it. You don't have the second kind of freedom that you need, namely freedom of ability. You may have freedom of opportunity because you got there. The opportunity is before you, but you don't have the ability. They are not going to let you jump. Okay, so first off, there are options for people to skydive who don't have lessons. You know, they have tandem jumps, for example. Okay, but I'm getting off track of his point. I still think that John Piper is confused about what your freedom is. Maybe for John Piper, the only true freedom is being able to do what you want, when you want, and how you want. But let's say you want to be a doctor or a scientist of some kind, like a chemist, or you want to get a PhD. You want an accomplishment. Your area of freedom is in the choosing. A body of experts gets to decide what you need to do to reach your goal. Or let's say you wanted to play in a professional sports team, or you wanted to play an instrument in an orchestra. Your freedom ends with setting the goal. After that, you would need to take lessons, train or practice, and work really hard. And then because you are not in control of auditions or tryouts, you might still not accomplish your goal. None of that is your freedom. Your freedom is in the choice. I could go on about this, but just to sum up, freedom doesn't mean controlling every variable in your life. All right, let's go on. Let's see what number 3 is. Number 3, a fitting motive. Suppose you make it to the airport. You go to all the classes, you have all the abilities you need, you take off in the airplane, and as soon as the door opens, you look out and all your desire vanishes. You are paralyzed with fear at jumping out of this airplane, and you will not jump out. You have lost the freedom of desire. Now, you might dutifully jump out, but that is not the way we want to be Christian, right? Everybody knows dutiful jumping is not freedom. It is just another kind of bondage. What you want is to think, I love this, I want to do this, I am out of here, and to jump. That is freedom, but you don't have it. You just lost it. You are in fear, and so you don't have the freedom of desire. Freedom of desire, you still have freedom. You cannot jump. You are still free. I'm convinced that John Piper doesn't know what freedom actually is. Your freedom was choosing the hobby of skydiving. But if you change your mind, you can use your freedom to stay on the plane. You know, in the last installment, he talked about being unable to get off the floor because we love lying on the floor so much. And it's just assumed that getting up is what needs to happen. So if you don't want to get up, there's something wrong with you. Here, jumping out of the plane is just an unquestioned good, I guess. Jumping out of the plane is not the freedom. It is deciding to jump that is the freedom. This reveals something about his mindset, I think. It is that your ability to choose just doesn't matter. What is good to do is objective, and your desire for it, your freedom to do it, doesn't matter at all. So basically, this feeling of freedom that he posits we get if we jump out of a plane and we start free falling, that is just an unquestioned good, and we need to be able to make that leap. And this is the Christianity is just a good that we need to be able to accept. So once again, this is not about freedom. Your desire, what you want, that is where your freedom is. But according to Christians, that desire doesn't matter. And yet there's something wrong with us if we can't get that desire. All right, let's go on and see the last one. Number 4, the perfect rescuer. Suppose you get to the airport, no obstacle because you have the freedom of opportunity, which is not a freedom. You have all the know-how necessary because you have the freedom of ability. Again, that's not freedom. You look out the door at the tiny clusters of silos and barns and farmhouses a few miles down, and you just can't wait to jump because you have all the freedom of desire. Okay, that's great. This is your freedom. Your desire is your freedom. If you don't have the desire, then you have the freedom to not jump, whatever. This is what you want to do. Let's go on. So you jump, and as you free fall, enjoying every second of it, unknown to you, your parachute is defective. It is not going to open no matter what you do. Are you free? You feel free, but you don't know what is going to happen. This is where most people live, thinking they are fully free. Well, are you free? You are not free. You are dead in 30 seconds. You'll be dead with regrets. in order to be fully free, you have to have a parachute in good working order. You need to be saved. You need to have Jesus Christ, because you are cruising towards destruction, no matter how free you feel in this world, without a savior. Oh my. So this is another confusion. We don't control outcomes. We are free to make bad choices. In fact, people do use their freedom to make choices that reveal themselves to be terrible, like all the time. My suggestion is, learn from them. Like, you make a bad choice, figure out what you can do better in the future. But anyway, I guess what Piper is getting at is another freedom from, and that this case it's freedom from regret. But this is an act of freedom of choosing. And I don't know how you could actually promise somebody that they will be free from regret. There's no way that you could ever get to a point where you can be sure that that is the case. I know Christians like John Piper are really, really sure of what they believe and what's going to happen, but the fact of the matter is they really can't be. We can delude ourselves with false hope. I can, for example, play the lottery and imagine that one of these days I'm going to win $1 million, so no matter how much money I spend on the lottery, however much I win is going to be worth it. But that could be a false hope, and I won't know that until, the last day of my life, which I still won't know. I guess a lot of this is just assuming we have an afterlife and then we have a soul that's going to know stuff. But I don't see any evidence for any of that. I don't see any evidence that souls exist and souls are doing any kind of cogitation at all. So anyway, this isn't freedom. The fact that you don't control the outcome. I think this is maybe something that people have trouble coming to terms with, but there are lots of things in this world that we don't control. We don't control what other people think. We don't control what other people think about us. We can try to impact what they think, but at the end of the day, they think what they think, basically, and based on things that we have no control over. We don't control a lot of things that happen outside of us. We don't control outcomes of things like the example I gave of getting on a sports team or being in an orchestra. There are other people that are also in charge of those decisions. So we have to learn where our locus of control is. But here, I guess, Christians want to say that the locus of control is always with God, and we should put our faith that whatever he's doing is the right thing, and yada yada. And so therefore we can just let go, and the freedom we have is freedom from worry. So we're really banking on a lot of freedom from in these circumstances. Freedom from sin, freedom from worry, freedom from doing the wrong thing, etc. All right, let's wrap up John Piper here. Layers of liberty in Christ. When Jesus makes us free, he makes us free at every single level. He has given us the freedom of opportunity. He died for us. Don't know how that is a freedom of opportunity. That supposedly set us free of our sins. So, what? I don't know. The freedom of ability. He gave us the gift of faith. Well, I don't know where he put mine. I sure did not get it. The freedom of desire. He put a new heart in us and wrote his law on us, causing us to have new desires and new loves. He gives us the freedom of having no regrets in 1,000 years. So here it is that our free will doesn't matter. What we desire doesn't matter because he's going to force us to have new desires and new loves. We have no choice in the matter. This is the thing of getting off the floor from the previous episode and the skydiving. These are just the right things to do. They're not neutral things. They're not things we might choose or might not choose. These are things we're supposed to do if we want to be correct about everything, I guess. And we don't have a choice. So once again, this is not really freedom. The freedom I think he's offering us is security, to feel like we are aligned with everything correct and right, and that gives us freedom. It's a freedom from, it's not a freedom to. It's a freedom from worry or concern or thought or anything, really. We could just, be blissfully ignorant in the world, and that feels like freedom. All right, last paragraph. We will jump out of this airplane forever with Jesus at our side, and the parachute will always open. We will land in green pastures, etc. Only believers in Jesus have this kind of freedom. I don't want to say that people can't get a good feeling out of being Christian. I am sure there is something satisfying about the idea that you have aligned yourself with what is being termed the creator and moral authority of the universe. I imagine it gives people joy to join together with others, to sing or listen to a preacher or have fellowship in other ways when they go to their services. We are, after all, social creatures. However, I wouldn't say that any of this is thrilling. And it seems to me John Piper just wants to convince people that their ordinary Christian lives are like thrill seekers. You don't need to do anything to get this feeling except say a prayer. So Christians are just more thrill-seeking than actual thrill seekers. And importantly, it is better for you to give up your real desires, your real freedom, to do what people who speak for God, like John Piper, tell you should want. Then you have another freedom from deciding what is really right and true, of having your own thoughts on the matter, and maybe being wrong. Because apparently, being a Christian means also being free from being wrong. Well, do you have any thoughts about this Christian freedom? Put it in the comments below, and while you're down there, you can like, subscribe, and do all the YouTube stuff. You're on YouTube. You know what to do. I am a few people short of 1,000. I'm going to do something special when we hit 1,000. I've got some ideas rolling around in my brain. And if you like what I do, you can buy me a coffee. That link is in the description below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.